Greetings, everyone. Hope you're doing well. Dr. Sami here, board-certified radiologist, and I want to welcome you to this video on how to start your own teleradiology practice in 10 ridiculously simple steps. All right, and we made this video really simple. I met a bunch of people here at Arab Health, a lot of radiologists, and we had some really great exchanges, and so I decided to make this for you guys so we can talk about this incredible field of teleradiology that we're in. I mean, we live in an incredible time where you can graduate from medical school as a physician, do a radiology residency, and have just an incredible lifestyle and income. No matter where you are in the world, really, you could be, in the United States, Europe, Asia, Africa. I've met radiologists from all over the world here in Dubai, and it's really been eye-opening to hear about their experiences and what they're doing, and how teleradiology business is just done in other parts of the world outside of the United States. So let's dive right into this, and let's make a go of it, okay? So here are the 10 steps, the roadmap, okay? So the first thing I'm going to do is what I'm going to have you think about is change your view of radiology reporting. This is a great place to start, all right? Step 2 is optimize your workspace. Step 3 is thinking about parallel versus serial reporting. Step 4, abandon voice recognition altogether. This is really important, all right? It may be different than what you're used to, all right? Step 5, working in isolation is a mistake. I'm going to go into why that is. You want to work in teams as a teleradiologist. Step 6, drop the idea of teleradiology as a job. This is not a job, all right? Step 7, we're going to briefly talk about hardware and software considerations. Step 8, malpractice insurance considerations. Step 9, financing and accounting. And step 10, bring it all together into one coherent system, all right? So those are the outlines of the steps, and so let's just jump right into it, all right? So step 1, change your view of radiology reporting altogether. This is a hard one for people to understand. We want to ask ourselves the question, how did we as radiologists become clerks? We really became clerks, right? When I trained in residency, there was no voice recognition. We dictated into a telephone line or into a tape recorder, and we just kind of had a free-flowing thought process that just allowed us to dictate our findings and our impression, and we move on to the next case. So while transcribing of these reports by transcriptionists, it didn't allow for complete free association of findings commingled with impressions. You could still report the findings in a free-flowing, organized manner while keeping your eyes on the images at all times. Now, the drawback to this approach was that as you read more and more cases, there'd be the inevitable pile of reports that waited for you at the end of your shift or even later. So I remember times when there would be 150, 200 reports waiting for me at the end of my shift. And sometimes I didn't know, on report number 62, was it a left ureteral stone, even though the history says right? Was it a transcriptionist mistake? I wouldn't know unless I would go back the next day, make notes on my reports, and go back the next day and check the images. And so that would be the only way to verify that. But that was, relatively impractical for almost every radiologist, dictating high-volume radiology. So voice recognition, however, has turned us into radiology clerks. So instead of our eyes being on the patient's images at all times, now our eyes dart between the images and the report, checking to make sure that every line we are seeing is recorded correctly, right? And it's very hard in this workflow to switch between clinical analysis mode to typographical clerical mode. And to do it back and forth hundreds of times in a shift is just quite draining, right? Now, we have tremendous increased pressure on turnaround times against us, right? So prudent radiologists, they'd make lists of cases. Now, I'm talking about transcription. When we were in the transcription world, we make lists of cases that verify the findings with the images the next day before signing. But oftentimes, even the normal reports got signed off on patients due to multiple errors, wrong accession number, wrong patient name, transcriptionist error, yada, yada, yada. And those things had significant findings, and the radiologist was none the wiser. We'd catch these later, and we'd talk about them in QA conferences. There weren't many. There were a few, but sometimes the errors were significant, and they made a difference in patient care. So is there a solution? So if I'm at a single workstation with a dictaphone, and I'm sentenced to creating one report on one patient in one given set of time, it's not a very efficient workflow, only processing one at a time. So think about a brain from the ER that just popped up on your work list. You scroll through the images with the ER doc and start to tell him or her the findings. Then, after they leave, you spend the next 4 minutes dictating what you just told the ER doctor. So why do we do this? Yeah, I mean, do you see a problem here? So those of you in academics, I mean, if you have a resident or a fellow, they'd probably be taking notes and then proceed to create the report while you want to go get coffee or look at another case or do something else. But as a teleradiologist or even on-site radiologist at a private practice, you probably don't have senior residents or fellows right by your side, right? So now what if you had a scribe? So somebody who was working real time, not in a disparate timeline, but in real time, in your real time, noting down the findings of what you're talking about. It would make things a lot more easier, right? So imagine the same scenario now with the ER case, but no ER doc. You're just reviewing the case and your scribe is taking on notes and creating your report for you while you go to get coffee. So you look at the images, you tell them, there's moderate atrophy, there's an old lacunar infarct in the left side basal ganglia, and there's mild right side mastoiditis. And that's your whole report. Now, your scribe will go get the dose, get the contrast dose if there's contrast, make sure the recons and then the macro findings are all there, and put all that in place. And so that frees up your time to go do other things, right? You're not doing the clerical work of being the clerk, essentially, right? So imagine instead of going to get coffee, you're looking at another workstation or another scribe. And then by the time you finish reviewing the fourth workstation, right? Imagine we have 6 workstations. Your reports from your other cases are all coming up on your screens in real time next to your images, ready for you to scroll through the images again while confirming and reading your report, right? So the amount you pay the scribe, by the way, is peanuts. It does work out financially, and it does increase your productivity and decrease your stress. And a lot of radiologists who work for me, they say the increased joy that they have is just priceless, right? So using teleradiology scribes allows for the free association of findings commingled with impressions. I mean, the reporting is more natural. It allows for the reporting to follow the power of your brain rather than forcing your brain to follow the structure of the reporting. Does that make sense? I see a lot of radiologists who can say a lot about a case, right, just talking about it casually, but when it comes to actually making out the report, they seem very contorted in the way they want to structure things rather than just saying the things that they want to say. Having a scribe there actually helps you tremendously to craft your report. It seems like it would take a long time, but it just doesn't. Like, you can just talk about your findings, your positive findings only, and they can craft it for you. And it does work very elegantly. So your brain and your subconscious mind hold tremendous knowledge and power if you'll just cut them loose and allow them to do their thing. So the next time you go to a case, forget about the report for a second and let your brain lead you to where it wants to go. So you just start talking the findings with commingled impressions. And you'll be surprised to see what else you start noticing, connecting together and coming to new conclusions and perspectives for the patient. I mean, you've spent years of training and learning. Just let your brain do its thing. So free association, looking at the images, you'll be surprised at where you're going to start picking up. All right, step 2, let's talk about that. So step 2, the monitors, the seatings, and the ergonomics are all wrong, okay? So why are medical monitors so small? I think it's generally based off the idea of sitting in the secretarial position as the most ergonomic way to work. Feet on the ground, back straight, hands hovering over the keyboard, monitors at eye level, right? So this position just makes for, I think, a very awkward position to work from, but it looks really neat to corporate types, right, who want neat rows of office-based workers. Now, here's the problem with the secretarial position. It's really hard to get work done sitting in this position for long periods of time. It's just uncomfortable. So what I do is I use the theater position. So I don't sit in the secretary position when reading cases. I sit in the theater position. So think of the lounge chairs at AMC. You're relaxed, you're lean back. Why did they get you in that position? Because you're comfortable. You can now focus on what's in front of you on the screen. So if you're more relaxed in your body, you can now really focus and enjoy what's being shown to you on the screen, right? So think about that in terms of your workflow ergonomics. So why is this any different in the workspace? Like, why is it that we need to be uncomfortable in the workspace and yet try to be as comfortable as possible when enjoying a movie? So I'd imagine, again, some radiology director accompanied by suits would not look too favorably at the sight of comfortable radiologists in hospital reading rooms producing higher quality and more productive work because it does not fit their mold of what a working person should look like. And I think a lot of radiologists don't think about this. They just kind of just take this all for granted. So jumping back to the monitor discussion for a second. So I think the reason monitors are the size they are is because that is what can fit on a desk with a person sitting in the secretarial position. But what if you have larger, more comfortable chairs like in the movie theaters? I mean, when you can lean back, get your legs elevated, and get you into the zero gravity position, you're, again, more comfortable, right? So could we then increase the size of the screens? Well, absolutely, right? I use 55-inch screens, and with the pathology being so much larger in size in front of you, at least for me, it tends to help me perceive smaller findings and really allows me to zoom in and get up close and personal with subtle fractures, tiny incidental and pathology you would otherwise miss because it was just too small to see given the screen size you're working with, right? So now let's build on the scribe model of reporting. Now, once you've finished one case and the scribe is making a report, you're free to go to another case on another screen. And again, I do this with 6 55-inch screens and 6 teleradiology scribes, all working remotely, all trained by me, and I'll talk about how that works as well. So when we did this, we were all in one theater, in one big room that was about 30 feet by 25 feet. In one corner, I had my 6 55-inch screens, and my scribes are sitting behind me with their monitors, and we shared one screen in common. So then COVID hit, and we had to innovate. So we took the same model, and now all of those scribes work from their homes, the United States and Canada, via HIPAA-compliant conferencing software. And all of our radiologists work from their homes or professional offices if they choose to, right? So let's talk about serial reporting and if it's really necessary in the age of being able to use teleradiology scribes. So I've seen radiologists with their fancy keyboard strokes, gargantuan mice that look more like a rat, a bear claw control for the other hand, fancy phrased grunts and clicks and beeps, calling into a library of over 2,000 macros. I mean, to see them in action is to watch a frenetic madman with 8 arms trying to squeeze water from rocks in the name of increased productivity. I mean, it's just absolutely ridiculous. Many radiologists just get absolutely physically tired because there's so much clicking and clacking and looking back and forth between the report and the screen and back to the report and whatnot. And I know there's a lot of AI, hullabaloo out there saying we're going to do this, we're going to do that. I mean, at the end of the day, if the radiologist has to provide all the energy for the workflow, there's going to be some limiting factors there, right? In our workflow with the scribe model, the radiologist is not providing all the energy to create the report. The radiologist simply focuses on image analysis and communicating that in a very succinct, relaxed workflow, right? So you want to maintain a relaxed workflow. So when radiologists join our live sessions, I mean, the first thing they comment on is how quiet and how relaxed everything is, right? And the reason it's that way is that I'm simply calling up my findings via free association as I'm seeing the images commingled with my impressions. So my scribes have access to, and they're well trained in all of my macros and know which findings are associated with which macro because I've trained them as such, right? So what happens? My eyes never leave the patient's images until I'm ready to review the report in real time that I created with the assistance of my scribe. So I'll look at, just imagine 6 monitors, you look at 6 cases, right? One might be a CT brain, then an abdomen pelvis, then a negative chest x-ray, and then you might get a complicated CT chest ab pel, and you talk your findings, your scribe is recording, and then maybe you have a couple more plain films. Now, once you're done with that, you're relaxed, right? Rest is important. I want to make this point here, is that the normal radiologist workflow assumes that you're just going to be running on the hamster wheel the entire night, 8 hours. Like you're just images, dictation, images, dictation, images, dictation. Well, that's the definition of a machine. You cannot be a machine. I can't tell you how important it is to have periods of rest in between your image analysis sessions. Now, oftentimes for me, that means, every hour I'm going to take a 5-minute to maybe 10-minute break. And you need that time in between cases to just relax, recuperate, regenerate your mind. I find that using our workflow, when I give all my findings, I'll have 2, 3, 4 additional minutes until the reports start popping up. So if I dictate 6 cases, I'm going to get 2 minutes of rest. So you do, 5 or 6 cycles of that, and that's another, maybe 10 minutes of rest that I'm going to have on top of the 5 or 10 minutes that I take. So out of every hour that I'm working, I'm resting for 10, 15, sometimes 20 minutes, but yet getting a lot more productivity out of my time that I'm working, right? So why is all this so important? So when I first started reporting with this methodology, I was first surprised at how much time was now freed up for me. I was focusing all of my time and effort on being a radiologist again, and now loving my profession, right? So parallel processing of cases, importantly, also opens up the idea of income diversification. So now you can read for multiple clients at the same time safely and with high quality, with a lot less stress and more money in your pocket as a radiologist. You can diversify and multiply because now you have your own staff that can be your scribes, your customer service to your clients, your quality control for your own cases, and your liaison to patients, doctors, and the healthcare team, right? Again, it doesn't cost a fortune. The scribes make you money and the numbers work, okay? So why does parallel reporting work best? So my scribes run all my interference for me interacting with the support staff of the Telerad companies, following up on recons, coordinating calls with doctors, while getting images up on a free workstation. And again, I'm just looking at my cases, and I'm not bothered with all this minutia. Otherwise, if you're working in a silo all by yourself, you're providing the energy to go do all that stuff, right? And that was the old workflow, and it just didn't make sense. So now here we want to talk about the company that you may be working for. Let's say you're working for a big box company or a practice and whatnot. Some of these organizations will have a support team to take care of quote unquote everything, right? Well, that's only partly true. They'll get the doctor on the phone, but what happens when you're reading a trauma case with missing recons, then you get a code stroke? Again, you gotta be the one choosing that case on the same screen, going in, going out. You as the radiologist have to provide all the energy to now go into that trauma case, or go out of that trauma case rather, open the code stroke, only to discover the recons are not there and the axials are partly there, right? So we've done this many times, and it just works so much smoother when I can delegate all this to another person, right? So now, are you beginning to see this picture? We've spent a lot of time on scribes. So our scribes can step in and communicate with the hospitals and get the recons, make the calls, figure out stuff for you on your behalf. And what I'm describing to you all works in a seamless fashion. We've been doing it for years, right? It all works like a symphony. So when radiologists come observe us, they marvel at how this all just kind of works together. Everybody knows their role on the team and what they need to do. That role is to support the teleradiologist to make you more productive, create higher quality reports, and be happier in your profession, all right? So using scribes, you want to abandon voice recognition altogether, all right? So voice recognition is decreasing your quality and killing your productivity. Voice recognition decreases your quality and it increases your stress. A lot of people are fighting with the dictaphone, period, paragraph, macro this, macro that. You want to stop being a radiologist clerk and just focus on what you're trained to do, which is provide high-powered analysis of quantitative human imaging. All right. So now we use macro software. That's great. That's great when somebody else besides yourself is managing it. Voice recognition, bad. Okay. We don't use any voice recognition. So radiology, can be a social sport. So working in isolation is a total mistake for radiologists. Here with our scribe team, there's a dedicated team that's solely there to making sure you're more successful when all this time you've been working in isolation. You don't need to work in isolation. It's a source of stress for a lot of radiologists. Some radiologists leave the profession because they're just tired of the social isolation, right? So as part of that working in a team environment, your scribes can hold you accountable. Come on, doctor, we said we would do these outpatient ultrasounds before dinner. Just a couple more and we'll be done, right? Or, hey doc, I know we're all gonna go for a 15-minute dinner break, but let's get this code stroke out. It just came in, I got the recons here, I'm only getting the doctor on the phone. I mean, you'll rediscover yourself into the profession of teaching as well. You're gonna be teaching your scribes things, and many of the scribes that we use are graduates from medical schools, or they're applying to residency, or they're medical students or pre-med students taking a year off. We get all kinds of people who want to work with us as scribes for a year, 2 years, 3 years, right? We have fourth-year medical students who rotate with us as well from medical schools. In a teleradiology rotation, we created 5 years ago, and the medical schools actually pay us for this. So it adds a nice little income stream to any teleradiologist's income, and I can show you how to do that. It can be in the high 5 figures. So a couple of my radiologists are doing this, and they're enjoying it. I mean, they're enjoying looking at interesting cases and teaching 1 or 2 or 3 medical students that are on via screen share, and it's actually quite fun. So when we talk about teams, great things are generally accomplished when teams of people come together to solve a problem. So when I work for just one big box teleradiology company, hours could go by before I had any meaningful interaction with another human being. So solo workers generally suffer from isolation, burnout, and increased stress, right? So your scribes will motivate you and sometimes even inspire you. You're there for each other when it gets busy, and everyone's helpful and trains each other. You don't and you should not have to work in isolation anymore as a teleradiologist at all, right? So step 6 in this pathway is drop the idea of teleradiology as a job. So when you have a system to read cases and a team, you no longer have a job but a practice and a business. You are by definition an entrepreneur. Now some of you may not be comfortable with that. You may be, you may need to give yourself permission to earn more than what you make at a job. Some people really struggle with this. But the world it's changing incredibly fast. It's becoming more entrepreneurial, where 25-year-olds are becoming billionaires, right? Not to say that, you need to do this just to go make lots of money, but what's important is you don't want to just be a cog in a wheel. At least I don't want to be a cog in a wheel. I mean, if that's you, then more power to you. But there's a lot more options to us now worldwide as teleradiologists than ever before, and there's no reason why we can't innovate, be more productive, generate higher quality reports, and make increased margin for ourselves as well. So what do they say on CNBC? Get yours, right? Simple. It's right to the point. So get comfortable with creating your own brand in teleradiology. You don't need an MBA or any more training. There are plenty of ways and places to gain the skills to create your own brand in teleradiology practice, right? By the way, just a side note, teleradiology companies are not the enemy. This seems a little counterintuitive, but all the big box companies out there, they've trodden the path, right? So there's 1,000 ways to get up the mountain, and probably 995 ways to die on the mountain, and maybe only 5 ways to get up safely, right? So the telerad companies have gotten something right, and there's a lot you can learn from them. My suggestion is, if you're new, go work with a big box company. Understand the methodology, the workflow, the pressures that are involved. It's a great place to learn as an extension of your residence, your fellowship. Yeah, they make a profit off your work, but they provide you with volume among other support functions. So you can become a really astute teleradiologist by working with a big box company and learning, from all that they have to offer. And then at some point, you do want to go, independent, right? So now, some of the purists among you may still be clinging to the idea that the only teleradiology contract worth having is one directly with a hospital or an imaging center. So that may be true. If you want to go build the next VRAD or Imaging Advantage or Rad Partners or and whatnot, but it involves a lot of time that is not clinical reading of cases, and a lot of radiologists are just not good at that. But if you want to be a more entrepreneur, I would want to encourage you to go out and do that. But look at yourself, the individual radiologist, as an independent processor of radiology work, regardless of where it comes from, right? You don't necessarily need to be the one that owns all the contracts. I did that for years. I was a subcontractor for years before I started my own practice, right? So there's a lot you have to learn. There's risk you have to be willing to take, and it's a tough business. This is not an easy business, but if you can, get your mind around the idea that you can process work to the level from where you're at. So if you're just starting out, maybe work with a big box company. If you have a few years of experience and you know how to manage client expectations, and you want to get some contracts in place, there's local hospitals in your area, imaging centers, mobile X-ray and ultrasound companies. Those are all places to start. So highly encourage you to give your yourself a shot at that too as well. I mean, try your contracting on your own as well. So let's go to step 7, hardware and software considerations, right? There's multiple ways to report teleradiology exams remotely. However, there's one decision fork you need to pass which can determine a lot about how your independent teleradiology practice is run, right? So, and again, this may be dependent on where you are in your practice. Are you early? Are you late? Are you in the middle of your career? And how much experience and how much risk you want to take. But those of you who want to be entrepreneurial, you have to decide if you're going to invest in your own PACS risk system or you're going to use client systems. And I've done both, and there's pros and cons to doing both, right? So setting up your own PACS and risks, I mean, this can be an investment in hardware and software, even for cloud-based systems. So there's commitment in time. You're going to have to hire people. You're going to have to do implementations, HL7 integrations. I mean, they're less time-consuming than before, but they still involve multiple layers of input and approvals from IT divisions at hospitals and companies and whatnot. You can also access per-click PACS risk systems in the cloud, but per-click expenses on some of these SaaS or software service systems can be really, really high. There's people who do it and they're successful at doing it, but you just have to keep those costs in mind, right? So let's go to step 8, malpractice insurance considerations. So the first question I get asked by nearly all radiologists is tail covered? This question comes from a lack of understanding of how tail insurance works in teleradiology. So with an on-site group, the tail is used as an employment retention trick. Many radiologists just don't have the cash to purchase a $50K or $100K tail. So in Illinois, for example, most groups are covered by ISME. In order to leave ISME, if you're leaving your group, you have to purchase a tail policy to cover your own risk, as the next group may not be willing to cover it. Maybe in this market there are groups that are willing to cover it, but in my experience, a lot of radiologists I know in the Illinois area, they had to purchase their own tail, which could range from $50,000 to $100,000. So this makes jumping groups very expensive, right? And in Telerad, most companies have a national malpractice certificate. So when a rad leaves, they don't need to purchase a separate tail policy, but rather that coverage is carried on the current policy of the group. It's only when the group closes down or changes policies does tail get paid for and covered. Now, if you guys have a different understanding of that, let me know. Just email me or call me. I'm happy to understand more if you have experience with that differently. But all the carriers that we've worked with and all the agents that we've worked with, this is our understanding of how it works, right? So let's go to step 9. And I can't go into tremendous detail on all these steps. I mean, each of these steps could probably be like an hour-long video, right? But we want to give you a flavor of kind of what's involved and what's the roadmap and whatnot. So step 9, financing and accounting. Now, this topic is very broad with a lot of important parts. First of all, you need a really, really good bookkeeper. Most RADs can't even balance their own checkbooks, let alone how to log into QuickBooks Online. So what you want to do is get a really good bookkeeper and accounting firm. Get a really good tax planning firm, because you're going to need it, right? Especially if your revenues are going to go up. You're going to definitely need that. So if you get employees, you need to figure out benefits, and all that stuff can get complicated. So you want to be on top of your books right from the beginning. Don't let this by the wayside. Hire a good bookkeeping firm. Get into QuickBooks Online right away. Get used to doing your bookkeeping on at least a weekly basis, okay? So step 10, creating a system to bring it all together. Now, if you've come this far into this long-winded journey with me, perhaps you're interested in creating your own independent teleradiology practice from home. So I've created and perfected a complete system of teleradiology reporting and processing, which will allow you to keep your current teleradiology clients, add more clients for diversifying and securing your income, decrease your stress, increase your productivity, and bring back joy into your everyday practice, and allow you to give back and teach the next generation of physicians what you have learned. So if you found value in watching this presentation, please stay tuned to my LinkedIn channel and my YouTube channel for new and interesting content on teleradiology. We are going to be having a free video course coming soon, and then there's going to be a paid course that's going to go into a lot more detail into all of these things. So thank you so much for watching this, and I look forward to interacting with you on my other channels. Thank you.